Too excited. Our next speaker is Dr. Sharmila Majumdar. Dr. Majumdar is a professor and the vice chair of research in the Department of Radiology at UCSF. She's, as everyone knows, a renowned expert in musculoskeletal imaging. She directs the Musculoskeletal Research Interest Group at UCSF, and not surprisingly, holds many other affiliations and titles across this university. Important for us, she's also a PI of a separate UH2, UH3 grant within the Backpack Consortium, and it's focused on using artificial intelligence and machine learning to automate and accelerate analysis from our lumbar spine imaging. Many of us within the Department of Orthopedic Surgery have collaborated with her or benefited from her advanced MRI sequences at some point. And today, she's going to be telling us more about her work developing precision medicine tools for imaging. Thanks, Sharmila.
Thank you. Can you all hear me, or should I turn off my video? Any other adjustments? All right.
Well, I think you can go full screen.
I can go full screen. Yeah, I just want to make sure my sound isn't cracking up.
Sounds good. Very clear.
Great. Thank you for inviting me to speak at your retreat. And I am going to be talking about machine learning and musculoskeletal imaging, but in the context of precision medicine, I am also going to apply machine learning to a lot of clinical data, patient-reported outcomes, and so on, and the works that I will present. I'm going to start off giving you a little bit of an overview as to how we think about intelligent imaging. And at the Center for Intelligent Imaging, we want to apply machine learning, deep learning, and artificial intelligence across the life cycle of imaging, so much so that it is from the moment the patient comes in, definition of the protocol, the section to be imaged, and image acquisition, noise reduction, to obtain faster images, because that is really one of the key points, especially in MR imaging, which becomes a barrier to imaging chronic lower back pain. Followed by that is the integrative methods for multimodal image analysis, segmentation, incorporating multi-sensor data, and obviously clinical validation in realistic applications in real-world problems, and education and outreach. But none of these pillars will operate in isolation. While we are imaging the subject, if we find out what the lesions are, we will have the ability to go cyclically and do the modification, again, using artificial intelligence to the acquisition plan. So that's the basic overall goal and the theme where we are headed. I'm not going to talk about osteoarthritis just because this was sort of REACH sponsored, but I want to tell you that if you have really good data, such as the Osteoarthritis Initiative data, and we have 15 plus years of well-controlled research, imaging data, as well as demographic and patient outcomes, the work that we've done with many of you in collaboration, there is an amazing amount of work that we could do using these data sets. One of the things that we've done is we've done automated morphological grading of the images, identifying lesions in the cartilage, meniscus, bone, etc. Cartilage thickness and bone shape analysis has been done. This was presented by Valentina a couple of weeks ago. And again, compositional changes in articular cartilage reflected by changes in MR relaxation times, T1 and T1 row and T2 that you've heard about are also possible. The issue is that when you want to do this in a clinical setting, it is technically demanding. It requires a lot of time for somebody to sit and segment the tissues and so on. However, with machine learning and availability of our data sets, we've been able to make these more automated and actually combine them with demographics and patient-reported outcomes to basically predict, for example, total knee replacements in subjects. Without actually using any parameters, but just using pure data-driven images, we've been able to predict total knee replacement in the Osteoarthritis Initiative in individuals. And some of these individuals do not have any signs of radiographic osteoarthritis at the beginning. So this was very interesting, but I just wanted to lay the framework for this. The idea, of course, is to use this in our clinical data sets in the clinic and pass it on to as decision support, combining APEX and EPIC data as well as the imaging data and past imaging, so that our radiologists can make the appropriate decisions as to what is going on and then further downstream. So the idea of clinical deployment is very central to what we are doing. I want to go through as I said, I'm going to change tenors just because we're going to be talking about REACH, and we have a team that is supporting us in various ways and are leading many areas. And you can see, of course, you heard from Valentina again a couple of weeks ago. These are the individuals, many of whom you know. In fact, all of you probably know all of these people. This is an interdisciplinary team. I've listed as many of the people that I could remember. And if I've forgotten somebody, I do apologize. But I want to point out one specific thing. This study and the way we are looking at it, we are integrating with the San Francisco VA. And we want to make sure some of our tools actually work at the VA as well as at UCSF. Chronic lower back pain is a known entity to all of you here, or most of you here anyway. And you know it's multifaceted. There are a cascade of events, multiple tissues are involved. Muscle size, composition, vascularity plays a role, disc plays a role, nerves plays a role. Spinal alignment is key. Stenosis, both canal stenosis and foraminal stenosis and facet arthropathy are all issues. These can all be visualized in MR images. And where artificial intelligence plays a role is in the, obviously, in the objective segmentation of tissues, which is necessary for finding out some of these lesions, but also for biomechanical modeling and so on. Alignment plays a major role in lower back pain. This is typically measured in X-rays. We can talk about that in a little bit, but essentially, artificial intelligence in imaging can play a role in extracting many of these features from images. And the role of advanced imaging on chronic lower back pain studies to date are actually limited. And let me talk about why, and then we can go back to what can be done. One of the reasons that people say there's very little link between imaging, often MR imaging or other imaging, and lower back pain is there, besides the heterogeneity in the patient population that you heard about, there's also heterogeneity in imaging. Different methodologies are used across different centers. Interpretations are also very heterogeneous. It is very driven by the training and the specialization of the radiologists, and we'll address a little bit of that in a bit. Quantitative imaging is technically very challenging from the perspective of image segmentation, derivation of these metrics, but it is also time consuming. And often MR imaging time is too long for chronic lower back pain patients. Pain, the final outcome, is also fairly subjective because it's basically obtained from patient-reported outcomes. So the challenges are many, but where are we going? X-ray imaging provides information on spinal alignment. MR imaging provides excellent soft tissue and even bone information. And using machine learning, we hope that we will be able to address some of these imaging issues and maybe make it a little bit better from the perspective of using imaging in backpack and in lower back pain studies. I'm not going to go through all of our results in excruciating detail. I have very busy slides because I do want to have some time for discussion. We have taken X-rays, which are available in our PAC system. And the methodology that I'm going to quote is we've had expert radiologists annotate these images for the points, essentially, and then trained a machine learning algorithm to determine those points, and the alignment is derived from those images. And then in another data set called the validation data set, we validated it and tested it in a data set which has never been seen by the algorithm. The methodology is going to be identical across many of our applications, that we'll have a expert annotated set, a validation a training set, a validation set, and a test set. Using that, we've actually looked at sagittal and coronal imbalance. Radiologists hate reading scoliosis films, and we have actually obtained a model which often performs better than two radiologists. It is also looking at implant failure. And we have analyzed, Claudia Irendo, one of the bioengineering students, has analyzed the entire PAC system and gone beyond these measures and looked at the shape of the spine and looked at the distribution of the shape, longitudinal evolution in some of the shape. And clearly, ultimately, the idea is we are reaching out to see what are the clinical implications of this kind of analysis and deployment of this tool to the clinic. Moving forward, as I said, we want to use the generalized clinical images in our system for using machine learning to extract some of these features. So we looked at our PACS data system, and we randomly selected from the clinical acquired scans over a 10-year period. Now, keep in mind, the quality has varied over these 10 years, but we just decided to use 10 years. And we looked at acute to chronic lower back pain patients. The exclusion criteria, such as fractures, cancer, etc., are listed here. And we had expert annotations, either free-form segmentation of the tissues or lesion identification by the radiologists. I'm sort of going into some of the data that we've, the segmentation of the tissues that we've been able to achieve. We've been able to segment the muscle tissues and of the paraspinal muscles. And this is now being tested out by Jeannie Bailey and her team. And we will do the modifications because we use the images that we had annotated. The needs of the others are going to be very different. They might want other muscles annotated, and we are basically deploying a model which provides very good segmentation results automatically compared to the manual segmentation. Similar results have been obtained in the vertebral bodies and the disc. Why this becomes important is we have currently a relationship, a subcontract with Beth Israel, with Mary Buxheim and Dennis Anderson, and they're developing biomechanical models where, looking at the segmentations, they can measure the loading at the spine. And our preliminary results are showing some relationships between loading at the spinal level and some of the outcomes, such as the disability scores. Very early results in a small cohort of patients. This is also being extended to working with Bill Maris at OSU, which is part of this backpack consortium, which is going to be amazing to get some of these biomechanical parameters out of the MR images. Lesion detection. Now, I'm not going to, as I said, talk about every single tissue in the spine in great detail, but Fuhrman scoring measures degenerative disc disease, canal stenosis. Everybody knows what that is. And modic changes are end plate changes. I just want to identify some of the issues that we have run into when you have expert annotations between different radiologists, often because of the subjectivity of the measure, because of the ideas of the specialization, etc. The correlation, the Cohen's kappa, is often not very high. It's 0.57, for example, for disc Fuhrman changes. For canal stenosis, it's a little higher. Trainees are a little lower. They vary depending on which radiologist has trained the trainee. So in modic changes, which are end plate changes, you now have to look at two different images with two different contrasts, multiple levels of vertebral bodies, multiple slices. So basically, the grading of some of these changes becomes very, very complicated, and finding an agreement and therefore coming to some kind of conclusion as to their role in pain becomes complicated. We have worked with this, and we have developed a Fuhrman grading model, which basically you can see by the curve down here. I don't know if you see my cursor. The dots are the radiologists in this left-hand curve, and the model performance is shown by these lines. The model performs as well as the radiologists. We see similar behavior with the canal stenosis. Moving, we are looking at foraminal stenosis. This is our most recent work. Foraminal narrowing is, again, with our algorithm in our validation set, is showing very good recall. This is all under development. Foraminal stenosis is under development right now. Modic changes, what we went to looking at modic changes, because we have the whole images rather than just grading an end plate, we are beginning to provide sort of the identification of the modic changes. And because we are finding in many cases, the modic changes are a mixture of type 1 and type 2 changes in our algorithm. Facet arthropathy, again, we have a model which is being trained currently in terms of identifying facet arthropathy. This is a binary yes-no situation, because our annotations itself, we are finding very difficult to get agreement between mild, moderate, and severe. And our algorithm is performing fairly well with a good sensitivity and specificity. Nerves, we haven't talked about at all, but really we have, nerves are a great source of pain. MR images provide nerves, and we are trying to develop models for making the neurogram automated and finding characteristics of the nerves which may be relevant. This is the one aspect that we haven't dealt with. And a large part of it is being guided by backpack, because in backpack, nerves are not playing such a major role in the definition, either of the therapy and in fact, it's an exclusion criteria. Having gone through very fast that lesion detection is possible in the lumbar spine, these methodologies are being tested in various settings in various data sets right now. And ultimately, we are thinking of putting it out for validation in our radiology reading room so that we get better feedback as to how this decision support tool actually helps the reading. The reason it's important is for grading MR images, especially for backpack. It takes the radiologists a very, very long time to do the grading, often 30 to 40 minutes, depends on the skill of the radiologist. And in order to get good data, I think having a decision support tool is going to be really important, because we found in our prior studies in fracture, in the knee and osteoarthritis, using the decision support tool, the agreement between the radiologists and the trainees improves significantly. But moving on, MR can provide quantitative data about biochemical composition using machine learning to actually segment the discs and calculate the methodologies. We can actually get maps such as T1 row and T2, and we've related those to the various things such as the muscle cross-sectional areas, the fat content, etc. And this currently is now being tested out by Roland Krug and Jianmin in his group for the other UH2, UH3 study to see whether these tools can also be deployed as part of backpack and play a role. I haven't talked at all about reduction in imaging time, but that is critically important. Using machine learning for noise reduction, we have reduced the imaging time for most of the sequences by 50%, and using processing, what we've shown that you can actually get similar signal to noise ratios, discern anatomical structures, and the radiologists are confident in making the diagnosis using such images. You see some of these images shown here. Okay, great. So you can read those images. How about doing the analysis using the models that we have? We've also shown that the Modic model and the other models also work in these fast reconstructed images. Similarly, for reduction in the acquisition of the relaxation time images is critical. Relaxation time images like T1 row and T2 typically take about 10 minutes. If we can reduce that time, we would be able to include this in the clinic using machine learning in the reconstruction pathway such that we can do the relaxation time and the segmentation calculations before the image is reconstructed. We have been able to reduce the imaging time all the way up to 8 times the imaging time, and still got very good correlation between the relaxation time parameters that we measure in the disc. This is critical. If you can make relaxation time measurements and spit out the results before the images are reconstructed, don't go down 8 times, go down 4 times in 2.5 minutes. This could then be included in a clinical protocol. But every time I talk, I want to make you aware of the fact that a model is only as good as the data is. A radiologist is good as the training. How do we improve image annotation? Because we are dealing with fuzzy gold standards, especially in lesion detection. We've addressed this in the knee. We are beginning to address this in the spine using a platform for swarm intelligence, which is a platform where you make real-time collaboration to make decisions. We did a study. We had 3 residents. We looked at their majority vote and compared that with the attending for meniscal lesions, and we found that the kappa was low. We put them on the swarm platform. They all simultaneously looked to see where the lesion was and the lesion severity. The kappa improved. When you added 5 residents to this, the kappa improved some more compared to when you had 3, and the swarm value was again higher. So using this, I think this builds consensus decision. It brings out the differences in training and probably brings it to a consensus. And this is something that we plan to use moving forward to train our models in the future. Now, you've wondered what all these faces have been in each of these slides. These are the primary people who have been leading this. You may know many of them. Because I'm not naming them, I have put their pictures up there. So moving forward, what are we trying to do? We're trying to use machine learning and artificial intelligence to reduce scan and analysis time and optimize workflow. We want to standardize the outcomes that we get. We want expert trainees, because many times we have shown, even in the fracture study we did with Justin Krog from your department, that with decision support, the trainees become as good as the attendings. This would give global access to experts who are available worldwide, but it would also disseminate many of these tools worldwide. And quantitative imaging would become a reality in the imaging of chronic lower back pain. Clearly, our overall goal in this particular project is to have collaborative validation of these methodologies in two groups of patients, those undergoing medial nerve blocks and facet blocks, and the integrative exercise therapy group using these tools. We want, of course, comparisons with PROMs, but we also have an fMRI component which looks at pain signals in the brain, which we would like to correlate some of these metrics with, and make sure that the AI tools could correlate to exactly the same extent to the established standard tools. Moving forward, the goal really is to have all of the image-derived methodologies develop sex-specific biomechanical models, relate this to all of the pain metrics that we have. And with that, I just want to say thank you and leave you with the prospect of what artificial intelligence can do for imaging. And I hope I've left some time for questions.